The youth are a key stakeholder group in the Kampala Declaration on Migration, Environment and Climate Change Expert Working Group. Meet Rose Kobusinge, a migration, environment and climate change youth advocate and member of the Expert Working Group. Who is Rose Kobusinge?
I'm a MEC, which is Migration, Environment and Climate Change advocate from Uganda. I'm also a researcher, and my work revolves around protecting people on the move, people that are moving, especially because of climate change, but also, of course, other economic and socio-political reasons, and enabling the young Africans to be part of decision-making processes, especially in the climate space and in the development space, and mostly importantly, the grassroots young people, women and children, ensuring that their voices are amplified, they are aware about the climate crisis, and importantly, they have the power, they know what to do to contribute to a safer and healthier planet.
How has being part of the KDMECC Expert Working Group shaped your advocacy journey?
I think for me it's been really a great experience because it is the first ever policy process I've been engaged in. I've seen the Kampala Declaration on Migration, Environment and Climate Change from the starting point when it was born, where I got the honor to mobilize and coordinate young people to have their voices parts of the Kampala Declaration. So I was in this policy making room, seeing how states and member states and stakeholders negotiate differences and come up with interests that are coordinated, but at least for the sake of protecting people that are at the front line of the climate crisis. So for me, it was a leadership process and learning process, but not only that, because I was able to contribute my voice and share my perspectives, mostly bringing in and amplifying the voices from the young people that I work with, from the frontline communities that I work with. So, and it's been a great learning experience, and it has improved my leadership skills personally. And what at least I try to do is I update young people that are not part of this policy-making process about what is going on, and try to get what their perspective is, to ensure that when I get a chance to get into the room, I share those voices, not just my own voice.
How can the youth be better included in policy development and implementation?
The whole youth engagement agenda kind of needs to change a little bit, because sometimes you realize stakeholders engage young people just in conferences and panels, and that is not all that young people need. They need to have the power to actually influence decisions. So I think the better way to engage young people is giving them the power to contribute decisions, and not just say words and they're not heard and considered, but ensuring that their perspectives and skills and experiences are considered, because young people are not only experts of their own experiences, but for example, myself, I'm a climate change expert. I've studied climate change from my undergraduate to my master's and now my PhD. And so you realize, like, we come with experiences to the table, but also there are gaps that we don't have, that we have, right? For example, I've not been in this process for a long time, so maybe there's the language that we don't understand. Maybe we don't understand, we don't have the capacity to, let's say, write powerful proposals and stuff like that. So we need capacity building. So it's very important to understand the different contexts of young people. There are young people that are still in the journey and starting their journey in climate agenda. There are those that are in the middle. There are those that are at the top that are experts. So I think understanding those different contexts and matching the support and capacity building, but also the other support, technical information support, matching these different contexts that young people have. And I think getting young people from different spheres, from the grassroots, from young people that are working at national level, at the global level, bringing them together, and but not only bringing them together youth to youth, but bringing them together with policymakers and other non-state stakeholders, kind of like an intergenerational approach to youth participation. And lastly, I could say, I think there's need to structure youth engagement in all sectors and all departments and all processes. Not just remember them when there's an event, but having like youth focal points, having a youth desk within, let's say, ministry or an organization. If it's IOM, maybe at the regional office, having a youth focal person there. I think that means that youth are systematically embedded and enshrined in the organization objectives, in the organization's values and actions.
In what ways will youth inclusion in the expert working group impact implementation of the action plan?
I think myself and Emily, who is also a youth representative in the expert working group, we can see that even though we cannot speak before member states speak, I think that also kind of helps us. We just first watch and see what member states are saying and are contributing, and we identify the gaps, bringing in the youth and women and girls perspective of like, okay, for example, if they're talking about finance mechanisms for supporting nations and states and, you know, private sector, then we're like, oh, how about young people? How is the finance you're talking about going to consider the gaps, needs and aspirations of young people, because they don't have the same structures and reporting mechanisms and you know, everything that states have. So how is that going to be considerate of the different needs and capacities of young people? So we are bringing in, we're kind of like disrupting the system, the way how things go, the business as usual of just considering states and the big guys. So we bring in that, and you can see that the expert working group, people are really open to, you know, not only just hearing from the youth, but they respond, they're like, we're on the journey and we are planning to ensure that we get better at youth engagement. And they like the challenge, they like to be challenged of like, you know, this is giving them solutions. I think that's really important rather than complaining. We just tell them, okay, here's the solution, how you can make it better, make finance accessible to the young people, reduce the barriers to access finance. If it's a big finance mechanism, you need to have to break down the barrier and make it also accessible for young people. Maybe have a portion that is easier for young people and women and grassroots people to access. So I think that kind of makes the process a bit more holistic. But also in terms of the action plan, we made sure that the priorities of young people are part of the action plan that has been developed by the consultants. And that, for us as representatives, those are not our own priorities. We had consultations with young people, and we came up with a youth statement. So we had that consultation here in Nairobi earlier before the Africa Climate Summit. And we did consultations online, and then we came together, over 70 young people from across the continent, to come up with that kind of like, it's not like a position paper, but it's like a priorities paper. And then when we're in the expert working groups, you're like, this is what the young people said.
What is your parting shot?
No, I just maybe want to reemphasize that young people have solutions. They're just not victims. I think it's also important to realize, like, when you say young people are vulnerable, they're not supposed to be vulnerable. It's the situations that are making them vulnerable, right? And so it's good to understand that even though young people are at the front line and in vulnerable situations, they have lots of solutions that go unrecognized. They are undermined by policy and lack of access to resources, but also understanding that there are young people that are mostly at the front line, that are mostly in vulnerable situations. For example, who don't have phones, like smartphones, they don't have access to data, they don't even know what climate change is, yet they're experiencing the impacts, those brutal impacts. So as this is a call for other young people, is when you have access, the little access you have to, you know, resources, to decision-making rooms, is to at least connect to these grassroots young people, connect them to access these resources and opportunities, but also amplify their voice. You cannot speak for them, but try to amplify their voice and take back the information. Don't just get stuck with this information and be invited in every room, and then for personal reasons. So, so that is, I think, for me, what motivates me is, going back to the grassroots people, to the people on the move, the IDPs, the internally displaced people, flood victims, and refugees, and work directly with them, and use my experience and skills to build their capacity, but also empower them, and when they are access to resources, I'm like, hey, these are the resources, I can support you to also access them. I can access you to support this, to invite them to speak at events and put them out there to the world for them to know that they're doing something, they're not just vulnerable.